What is going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 75 of Littleroot Lessons. As always, I am your host, Carter Noble, joined by our fantastic co-host, Carl Wilkin.
We also have Evan and Swede with us today because we're doing
there.
No,
I was getting.
I'm beating you to it because we're doing power rankings. We ain't got all day today. How we doing, Evan and Swede?
Hi, I'm good. Happy to be here.
Hey guys.
Say wave to the camera, boys. You are on the podcast. We are. It's not every day we have guests. It's kind of nice.
Nah, it's been a hot minute. I think 50 was the last time we had
the end of
everyone on.
The end of the year anniversary episode was the last time.
Episode,
yeah.
So, like you mentioned, we are doing our draft league. We had both of our drafts for our divisions this past week. We have power rankings. Shout outs to Evan for putting this entire presentation together for us.
It's super nice.
He's phenomenal. I literally have no idea how to work Excel, and he just makes it look so seamless every time.
Oh yeah.
So, where do we want to start, guys?
So first things first, this is just opinions. This is in no way saying, oh, you drafted terribly, oh, you drafted great. It's going to come down to player skill and a ton of luck. So don't take all of these rankings super duper hard. We tried to stay unbiased. It was more just looking at Pokemon.
Yep. And I mean, that's looking at it, obviously when I rated my teams, I'm like, all right, this is the player's name just so I can keep it organized. But overall, I am ignoring that. I am looking at the 10 Mons as a whole. What do they accomplish?
I didn't even rate my team, so.
I did. I think my team's great.
My score is out of 3 instead of out of 4.
Yeah, and I also want to add in that we are all ranking your teams from 1 to 10, 1 being the worst and 10 being the best, and then there's 4 of us ranking. So the average of these scores will come up with a final grade, and it's like 4 opinions coming into one, and there's like the power of teamwork, I would say. Then your ranks are not that biased because we have 4 different opinions coming together to come up with a final number.
Mm-hmm.
It's very similar to like fantasy football in that regard, where you have all these experts and everything doing analysis before the season starts and ranking. I think this player is the number 1 running back on the board. Well, I think it's number 2, and it averages out to where 7 out of 8 say it's number 1, so it's going to be number 1 overall. Mm-hmm. So it's very much in that regard when we actually look at it. But again, end of the day, this is going to come down to player skill. A lot of these teams can shift within the regular season as well, because we do have access to being able to make trades not only with players but with the unselected pool as well. So there's a lot that can change between now and the end of the season.
Yep.
And as we all know, Pokemon is also a game of RNG. So a lot can happen. You can miss your 70% accurate move that's going to lock up the game, and next thing you know, you're 0-2.
Yep.
So
ready to get started, y'all?
I think so, man. Any other beginning words before we get to it?
We all good?
Cool.
Yep, let's all start. Nice. So with that, let's move on to the guard division. So yeah, all right. Starting off with the guard division, our first coach is Esquire and the Hotlanta Heels. Apparently, Incineroar is the heal Pokemon in the Pokédex, so that's where this team name came from. And then drafting Incineroar, Dracozolt as the first 2 picks, and then sort of rounding out Trick Room Core and a very cheeky Hippo to make Dracozolt go fast. But otherwise, to me, this feels like a Trick Room centric team that kind of just uses abilities to try and get fast in Thievul and Dracozolt. What do you think, guys?
I feel like I was just talking about Cyanide's team having Dracozolt plus Gigalith. Gigalith is way more utilized than Hippopotas. And as a result, I think that this Dracozolt is a lot weaker than the other team in the other division has it. And the fact that Weezing here doesn't really care about most of our abilities does make this an okay Weezing team. I know I talked quite a bit about how I like Thievul in the other division as well, but you have like Misty Terrain plus Thievul Unburden here as well, if that is something you are worried about. Misty Terrain is also pretty great because that means like your Dracozolt's not going to get burnt, your Heracross isn't going to get burnt, but that means your Shiinotic isn't sporing people. So there is a give and trade there. So overall, I feel like it's good. I think it's okay. I think a 7 is about as average as we can get here.
I'm gonna go the opposite way. You want your Heracross to get burnt because you want to guts things.
But what if you're Moxie?
But you want to guts things. Trust me on this one.
I'm not disagreeing, but
yeah, this team is about a 7. The Hippopotas just kind of pulls it down. Like, you have really good strategies to start out with the Dracozolt and a Sandmon, but then you drafted Hippopotas as your Sandmon. It's like you were just like, oh, I forgot that this thing gets Sand Rush. Let's sneak this Sandstream in. Oh, it's Hippopotas. We have a problem here, Captain. If there was going to be a team that could utilize Caparajah, though, this would probably be the team to do it. Caparajah is going to be a very powerful Pokemon on this team just because of its resistances and its just sheer force ability here. Because you probably are going to want to Dynamax your Hustle Dracozolt most of the time. Having Caparajah in the back to pick up KOs with sheer force is going to be a fairly powerful strategy. And another team with Shiinotic. Shiinotic is super underutilized in my opinion, mainly because you just don't have an ability most of the time, which with Weezing you don't really care too much. But I think, like I said, this is a 7 team in my opinion. It's good, but it's not great. It'll top cut probably, but I don't know how far of a run it'll make through playoffs.
Yeah, I think the main thing for me is the mix of abilities don't seem to gel together well. For example, the Golduck. You have Surf Swim, no Rain, which is fine because you have Cloud9. But your weather team itself, your Shiinotic has Rain Dish, so if you do expect a Rain team, then you have Cloud9 Golduck, well, you're not getting your healing. As well as your Weezing can just shut off abilities as well, so it shuts off your own abilities. So if you're in sand and you got your Dracozolt out and Weezing comes out, oh, you're slow again. So I don't think the abilities together kind of mesh well. However, I think one good thing going for Esquire here is we've got a good mix of offensive threats, slightly more sided towards the physical side, but do have some special like threats to be wary of as well. I think overall, though, it's going to be tough to pilot outside of your kind of main 2 or 3 mons with the Incineroar, Dracozolt, and you're probably forced to take the Hippopotas if you're taking the Dracozolt as well.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think one good thing to take away from this team is it does have that Firewater Grass and Fairy Dragon Steel Core, so I think it's not bad. And this is the first of 2 teams that all four of us have a common consensus to rate it as 7. So it's really, really very average, and it does take a little bit of skill to sort of pilot and try and win games. Then a small gripe finally I have for this team is that all mons are in the middling speed tier, so this makes opponents makes it easy to EV your speed stats against this team because there isn't a particularly speedy mon to prep for and outspeed. So with that, the next team we have is Kuribo's team, our reigning champion from season 2, with the Fallible Flygons, and Kuribo loves Flygon a lot, and for sure is going to pick up Flygon. It's a value C-tier pick. Hopefully Kuribo uses it well again. Then Kuribo went straight for a luxury pick despite being in the second position, right? He could have gone for anything like Dragapult or Togekiss, but he went straight for the luxury. I find it a little bit unorthodox, and it goes, we'll just have to wait and see if it really pays off, because after that he drafted Dracovish and Gigalith in the A tier. Then one last thing to note is, before I pass it on to you guys, is that Kuribo also has a A tier centric draft with a lot of good B tiers and no S tiers. What do you think, Carter?
I thought we put Talonflame in S tier. Evidently, I'm wrong. I actually really like the Gigalith Dracovish team that we have here. I like this way more than I do the previous Sand team with the Hippo. But I think this team is very good, and I think Karibo is an exceptional player and is going to pilot this team to the top levels.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to nitpick on this team. I love looking at these no S teams and just seeing how well-rounded they are.
Yes.
This is definitely someone who has played draft before, and you can definitely tell. I really like Galarian Mr. Mime. It does a whole lot of work. You get to slap Eviolited on it too. That's the one thing you get to do over Cantonian Mr. Mime. Other tools here, we things have this like Nidoking in the back with Sheer Force. It's going to do a lot of damage. We get to do Starmie things and Flygon things. Those are two Pokemon I know he likes to play with a lot. Skarmory is really, really cool. Gourgeist has some cool tools and like Trick or Treat. Yeah, there's just nothing but good things about this team. It's not a perfect team, I would say. There's probably some like trades you could make and get some bumps up. Dynamax is probably going to be hard for you. You're probably going to look towards maybe Dynamaxing Flygon a lot. Maybe doing Sandra Dracovish things is like the only way you can Dynamax Dracovish. But outside of that, there's definitely some really cool tools. It's really, if there was no Dynamax, this would be a solid 10 for sure.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
That was literally going to be my first point. If you played this Series 10, you'd be like, yep, great team. Run it.
Slap a 10 on this thing. Go for it.
Yeah, slap a 10. See you later. Good luck. I think, yeah, the Dynamax is the big thing. Like, who are you going to Dynamax? What is your main threat to Dynamax here? And there isn't an option, in my view. Like, yeah, you can slap on the Flygon, but its offenses aren't, like, amazingly great. And with Flygon, you kind of want to put a choice item on it to get that boost in offense. When you Dynamax it, you're going to lose that choice item. So, yeah, so you're looking at, like, it's really tough. If you're looking at me, you're looking at either Gigalith or even Luxray. But if you Dynamax the Gigalith, you have kind of lose the Weather War there, because you're kind of forced to click in Max Rockfall. Which, if it was in our division, would be really good, because a lot of teams are weak to rock. So,
Exactly.
yeah. But you'll see that there's a lot of answers to sand, I think, in this team. So, if you kind of get through the Dynamax phase, if Karibo can stall out the opponent Dynamax, then I don't think he has much of a problem after that. He can wipe away the screens with Mr. Mime as well, which is really useful. So, like, having that offense kind of just negated straight away is pretty good. Well, the defense, sorry, from the team negated is pretty good. But yeah, I think the big thing is who's he going to Dynamax? Because I'm not scared of any of these mons Dynamax in front of me, I feel. But yeah, that's why I gave it a 7, because I felt it's kind of on par with the other Sand team. And it's going to, who's going to Dracosaur versus Dracofish, who's going to win, sort of thing. So yeah. Evan?
Yeah, very interesting points. I think the lack of a solid Dynamax option, it could be good, it could be bad. I feel like in the side of good, right, like Kuribo could surprise you with a random like Dynamax mon and then try and steal games from there. So that might be something that can get going. I have some very interesting stats here. There are 4 Sand teams in Guard Division. So this is the second one. And Kuribo has a lot of very interesting repeat types. Pretty similar to Sweet's team in terms of like repeat dragon, repeat water, repeat flying. Is quite interesting. And also Sweet is incidentally in the player 2 slot. Then the last thing to note is there are 6 teams in the whole league without an S tier pick, and then there are 4 teams in the Guard division, in the division that we're covering now, without an S tier pick, and Kuribo is the first one of all 4. Yeah. Otherwise, I think this team is, to me, pretty average, and Kuribo really needs to get creative and plan well each week to win games. So moving on, this is our third coach, Yan, a very active member in Littleroot Lessons, and his team name is A Cut Above, with Polito, Kingdra, and Caesar as his mascots. And these mons are so common, right, in a single team, working very well together. And props to him for drafting them back to back in his first 3 picks, and then following up with some interesting support mons and another Magnezone as a steel type in Rain to do very well. Generally, a very cool cast and a good Rain team. What do you think, guys?
Does Gotharita get fake tears? It does, correct?
Yes, it does.
Yep. Okay, so I mean, like obviously we know how good Polito Kingdra is. We know how good Scizor is. We know how good Scizor is in Rain. Magnezone fits that role exceptionally well as well. Balloon, obviously I love the balloon, but we, on face value, don't have like immediate ways to trigger Unburden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not seeing anything. I think Miltank actually is very good here because it partners well next to Politoed for Sap Sipper things. So you can, if your opponent is going to be attacking you on that grass weakness side that Politoed has, and that neutral attack that neutral damage that Kingdra is going to take from it, you can always have Miltank be able to switch in and take those hits. And then we have Rhydon, who again I still don't like. I just don't think Rhydon fits this team either. When your primary goal is set Rain, Rhydon with a 4x weakness to water does not particularly care about that.
Yeah, I like this team a lot just because you just evolve this Gothorita into Gothitelle and put Scizor, Politoed, Sylveon, and all those together. You have a VGC team. Like, that is just a legit VGC team we saw in Series 6 a lot of the time. So this team's really, really powerful. We all ranked it very, very high. The issues are just like Delibird and like Rhydon keep this team from being insane, and then there's just no Drifblim synergies whatsoever. They may have just picked Drifblim because they like Drifblim and wanted to keep other people from doing it, because I know Drifblim is a very good answer into a lot of what these rain teams like to do. You can just set up Drifblim, set up Tailwind for your team, and then you get to match speeds with Kingdra. And you can just Sap Sipper Kingdra or Sap Sipper whatever and heal Drifblim back up, and the Kingdra's not hitting you super effectively at all. So that's why this is an 8. You're kind of obvious in what you're doing. Again, it's a weather team. Weathers are usually harder to control in Dynamax formats, so he's going to have to do a lot of pivoting to keep the rain up. I'm going to have to make sure Kingdra Dynamaxes safely, not have to worry too much about getting hit by a fairy type or anything like that. But yeah, this team's okay. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think the only thing preventing me from making it more than an 8 was the reliability of your kind of back four mons. Like, you've got your you mentioned it already, you've got your VGC team. Then what do you put in? Like, you have the Miltank you can put in to cover the Politoed and Kingdra. Where does Delibird fit in this team? Where does Rhydon fit in this team? Where does even Drifblim fit in this team? There's not a reliable way to potentially use it. But yeah, I think it's tough because, like, you say Rhydon kind of could fit in this team because, well, you got the Lightning Rod to protect the Politoed, protect Drifblim if you take it for some reason, protect neutral attacks from into the Kingdra as well, potentially. He has covered the weaknesses as well. He's got the Rhydon weaknesses covered pretty well. Like, if you're expecting a water move into Rhydon, hello, just switching Kingdra. You take no damage. There we go. But I think, yeah, outside the like solid 6 of VGC team there, you're kind of struggling to see. I think it's easy to predict what Jan could take every week, depending on your own team, of course. But yeah, I think overall though, it's pretty solid draft. I mean, nothing much else to say about it. It's just solid across the board. Outside the outside your main core team there. So gonna be tough to break down. And yeah, Jan's done a good first half. I think he can make some trades though, to improve that team.
Interesting point from all of you guys. I think this would sort of make this the stereotypical top-heavy team, like all of us are calling. For some draft league teams. And I found a way to sort of prop Drifblim's policy. Fun fact: if you see a Miltank go for Max Darkness, Miltank's only dark move is Fling, so it could help. It could do some sneaky things with weakness policy Drifblim. And last thing to note for Yen's team, I think a Polito Kingdra team is so solid, and this makes it a very formidable no S tier draft. With 4 A tiers, I think this top heavy draft doesn't need to worry about even being top heavy, right? You can just almost always bring the same 6 mons and still prove to be very difficult to take down. Then let's move on to Team 4. This is Pokemaster. Pokemaster and Lemmy came in during our LML, so they joined us and also moved on to our draft league. So very nice to see. And this is like the fan favorite. I feel like this is the more of a fan favorite than Sweet's Garrett Chill team, because this team actually drafted Tactile, Blaziken, and Swampert, everyone from Littleroot Lessons in the same team. And I love this team name so much, Masters of Hoenn. But before that, Pokemaster actually drafted Dragapult and Lucario, a very deadly combination, and then followed with a lot of very interesting, good stuff, Smon, that I think can support the team pretty well. What do you guys think?
Does Alolan Raichu do anything for this team?
No.
Like at face value, it just
fake out.
it feels exceptionally weak. Like past that, I'm not convinced that Audino does anything either. It passes like big wishes and that's it. Mawile I think is actually pretty great. I know a lot of the server will probably fight me on that, but I think Intimidate is exceptional, and I think this being a C tier Intimidator, even with its like lackluster stats, can still be quite useful. I think Dragapult Lucario is exceptionally good. You also have like Gardevoir here to be able to do like potential Trick Room things with your Wigglytuff, Mawile, Audino. Not a huge fan of that, but it is technically something you could do. Overall, I think it's okay. It's the best I can say about it. It's like, it's okay.
This team feels kind of pigeonholed into maxing Dragapult or Lucario. You could definitely max like Swampert or Sceptile or Blaziken and run over games with it that way, but Dragapult and Lucario are just so powerful when they Dynamax and get to do their thing that it feels like it's wrong to not Dynamax them a lot of the time. Outside of that, I'm kind of just like looking for like speed control, and like the best speed control they have is just like Airstream from Dragapult, which, yeah, like I mentioned, it's like if you feel pigeonholed into maxing Dragapult all the time for your speed control, it's going to be kind of hard. Gardevoir's here is like, it's cool, like you can do Trick Room things and it's a real good support. This Raichu, like I mentioned, just does nothing. Overall, I also gave this team a 6. If I could rate it, it was like 6.5. I'd probably put it there. This team's really cool. I like that they drafted all 3 of the Hoenn starters for us. Put them all on one team. It's really nice.
Yeah, I think I went slightly higher, but I do think it's kind of offensive pressure is pretty good. We all say Dragapult Lucario. You don't know whether it's going to be special or physical either side. Lucario, you tend to think more physical because Max Knuckle Stab will obviously boost attack. Dragapult, you also think might go attack because you need that. You may need that Max Airstreams coming in as well. So on the other side though, Gardevoir has the Trick Room. Also has a Trick Room Denial with Imprison, which is quite big. Mawile, I'm going to fight Carter on that hill and just say it's trash. Even with Intimidate, you still take a ton of damage from it. I'm probably going to get O-code at -1 from anything that's going to hit it anyway. So I think though, I mean, if you can get more into a move like not very effective hit, then yeah, it's going to be you can use it. There's no reason to say you can't use it. But I think overall, done a decent enough job. I do think there's going to be some trades made as the weeks go on, but he's covered his weaknesses pretty well, apart from the ground weakness. But then, yeah, so maybe some more ground resists could be an option for him. Yeah, but solid 7 for me overall.
For me, I rank this team a little bit higher because of how deadly Dragapult and a Lucario lead can be, because they're both immune to Intimidate. You can Dynamax Dragapult, you can even Dynamax Lucario and go for... you can Dynamax Dragapult and use Lucario to go for coaching. That can be very useful. And we did see in Littleroot lessons that Kuribo brought a Dragapult Lucario team in Series 9 to second place in one of our Littleroot Rumbles. So I'm not discounting this team at all. I think there's a lot of potential here. And interestingly, the rest of the mons can also Dynamax. I really agree with you guys that Alolan Raichu could be the weakest link of this team. Next up, we have Howard. So this is the second Hail team in the whole league. It's really very rare, so I really want to shout it out. And Howard managed to draft Togekiss as first pick, and then come up with a unorthodox like Hail Call plus Trick Room plus a little bit of Rain, but I'm not too sure here. What do you think, guys?
I think Togekiss is probably, if Incineroar is not the best Mon to draft in this league, it's probably Togekiss, just because it's able to do so much. Obviously, I feel okay about the Hail duo. When it's good, it's insane. Being able to have Ninetales for Weather Denial, especially in this division where you have, like you said, 4 sand teams, is going to be fairly important. The problem is Ninetales is pretty fast overall compared to the other setters. So if you do it on the lead, you're not going to be able to consistently keep your weather up. But there's a couple mons here that I just think stick out like sore thumbs. I think the Raboot just actually doesn't do anything. Carl and I were kind of talking through this last night. I think if Raboot had access to Court Change, it'd be a different story, but because that's Cinderace's signature move, it doesn't get access to it. I think Ludicolo is weird on this team. I know Bronzong gets access to Rain Dance.
Yep.
I believe Togekiss does as well.
I don't know that one off the top of my head.
That one, I like thinking about it, I believe it's true.
It does, yeah.
Okay, cool. So being able to have like potential for the like pseudo rain team here as well is fine. I really like Golurk, especially under Trick Room, where you can just punch things with Iron Fist. And Hitmonchan, I think, is like okay. Like it's probably my least favorite of the Hitmon trio, but it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Like we mentioned, there's this pseudo rain team, which I think is what puts this over the top. Otherwise, I would have this probably closer to a 6 or 5, just because I don't have a lot of faith in the Hail team per se. Mainly because, unlike the other Hail team, this one doesn't have a lot of actual like removal of weaknesses. Your Redirector is also happens just to be weak to Steel. So Steel type attacks are going to be fair game if you see Togekiss Ninetales on the field. You're going to hit that Togekiss super effectively no matter what at that point. As for just like the rest of the supporting cast, the Drapeon's cool. Raboot doesn't do anything here. Like the best I see is like Sucker Punch, which is cool. Like you could Sucker Punch a Bronzong and then go off from there, or Sucker Punch a Golurk and just go nuts. Golurk is one of my just like hidden favorites. I love Golurk so much. Its shiny is amazing. I wish it was better. It was my Regieleki answer for a while when Regieleki was popular in Series 7 and 9. But yeah, otherwise, just like this team feels okay. Like the hail thing, you're going to get people with hail sometimes because sometimes the teams are just going to line up against spam blizzard plus slush rush alolan sand slash, and then sometimes you're just going to be able to get them with rain with Ludicolo. Um, it's okay.
I think one big concern is the ground weakness. Granted, you do have
Mhm.
the redirection with Togekiss being immune to it, so it can give a little bit of thought to the opponents for Howard. But yeah, if you set up a couple of boosts with Max Quake, the main threats of his team are kind of redundant. Then I mean, Sand Slash, yeah, can take a hit pretty well. But it is at the end of the day, it's still on a Sand Slash and will go down to any kind of fire or fighting mon. Not covered those weaknesses very well either. Only one resist. So the Sand Slash does feel quite vulnerable to me. In this Hail team. Again, Togekiss can protect it to some extent, but you need to switch in the Togekiss from the Ninetales and then redirect the move so you've got one turn at least where you can just slap the Sand Slash. But yeah, overall, I think it's quite solid. I do like the idea of the Ludicolo. To and it does have the grass move, so it can hit the water mons pretty well as well. So I don't think there's too many rain teams in this division though. So you might revise that pick and may look for something else to counter other weathers. Sand is huge, so maybe something to work in sand that can counter sand as well.
That's kind of an interesting point. Yeah, so over here we do see all four of us. This is the second team that we have common consensus, giving Howard an overall 7. I think the one small shout out would be that this Bolton might have to put in a little bit of work because some of Howard's mons are susceptible to intimidate, and this competitive might be useful to ward off these intimidate opponents. Then I'm also very curious to see because Reboot was our C tier extended list, so we didn't really recommend it. So I'll be curious to see how Howard uses the Reboot, maybe with an Eviolite, but then again, it's really not the bulkiest mon out there. Okay, next up we have Team 6, coached by KS Knight Rider, and the team name is the Criminal Crocodiles. I made this team logo, I had a lot of fun doing it. And KS loves Whimsicott. He really respects Whimsicott a lot. He thinks that Whimsicott is one of the best draft mons out there. For me, I beg to differ, but I'll be curious to see how this plays out because the Whimsicott is coupled by a lot of what we call very good stuffs, bulky offense mons. Then with that reliable tailwind, I think this team might be okay. However, in terms of trick room, like I don't really see a very solid strategy. So maybe just Dusknoir alone. I'm not sure if it can work very well. What do you guys think?
So, fun fact for y'all: Scyther is the only mon that, when evolved, has the same base stat total as his evolution.
Oh yes, yes. It's really bulky. Yes.
Well,
I actually agree with you quite a bit, Evan. I don't particularly care for Whimsicott in Draft League, especially as an S tier pick. I feel like it does a lot, but I don't think it does enough as an S tier pick. Overall, though, I think like you kind of touched on like them having this trick room mode, but not really. Like Artifish, I think is gonna have to do like a lot of the heavy lifting under Trick Room. And I mean, like Dusknoir setting up Trick Room and then maxing itself is not the worst thing. This team does have quite a bit of speed behind it between Whimsicott, Salazzle, Heliolisk, and then having Tailwind behind all that as well. You have Stab, Airstream, some Scyther to make them go even faster. You also have Solar Power plus Sunny Day from Whimsicott here, so like Heliolisk is actually a pretty decent Dynamax target as well. overall, I think this seems pretty okay. Being able to pair Duraludon with Whimsicott is also quite exceptional because then you can do fake tears things and just blow things up.
I rated this team at a 5. Like I said, like Whimsicott isn't the greatest like S tier pick or draft tier pick in my opinion in general. And then the fact that we are very reliant on like Duraludon, Salazzle, Heliolisk, and Darmanitan to do most of our damage for us. And there's a big problem with all of these. 3 of those 4 are special attackers, and all 4 of them are weak to ground. And there is not a redirector on this team at all. So if your opponent can somehow get ahead of you, like fake out the Whimsicott and get faster than you, or somehow taunt the Whimsicott and you weren't prepared for that before you get Tailwind up and outspeed you, I don't think you can ever catch back up once they get a max Quake off. Like Salazzle, yes, can outspeed a lot of things naturally, but Duraludon really needs that help of trying to catch up in speed. And if it just happens to be like an Earth power into Duraludon, you can kiss your Duraludon goodbye. It's just gone. But yeah, otherwise this team is just kind of middling. You've got this Trick Room package, doesn't do a whole lot, and I feel like the team is definitely lacking in the tools department a little bit.
I think the Dusknoir pick is actually just more of a, not counter Trick Room, but just something that just annoys you. In my view, you have the option there, but you don't really want to use it. I do think he's done pretty well. He's drafted 16 types and no kind of dual typings, which is quite nice. He does have that ground weakness, but kind of overall he's done pretty well with the rest of the typings, like having resist to a lot of other things. He does have some physical threats. Crocodile's pretty good as well, having the Moxie ability as well as Intimidate. So if he feels like he wants to take over the game with Crocodile, he can do that. But overall, I think it's like kind of just a solid draft in my view. Whimsicott, Duraludon, as you touched on, just a good core. Salazzle can be annoying, can hit steel types as well with poison moves just to be even more annoying. Heliolisk is very strong. If you're able to get Sunny Day with a Whimsicott, then yeah, it's gonna do a lot of damage. It's very frail though, so he's got to kind of position well with his offensive mons to make sure he can keep them defended very well, because I think that's like his main offense mons are frail and his other mons are quite bulky, so he needs to position well to get them in a position where his offense can carry him.
Yeah, like you guys said, I think Whimsicott Duraludon was super popular back in Series 3 or Series 5, and this is sort of very similar to what the format that we are going for now. So hopefully KS can sort of pilot these mons pretty well. Then yeah, Sweet mentioned that 16 total types. I think this is the second out of 3 teams that managed to draft a lot of types, sort of cover each other's weaknesses. Let's just see how things play out, whether this can work very well for these coaches or not. Incidentally, one more team that we covered just now, Pokert's team, right, with 16 total type. KS and Pokert were the runners-up, right, in the LML, and they sort of have a very similar draft style and play style. So this is usually what you get from them, drafting a team of like 16 types with very rare mons that stack typings. This is the reason why I gave this team 8.5, is because it does have a lot of tools and a lot of very good coverage moves to prep well for each week, and I think almost every mon can come. Lastly, I'm very interested to see a Dynamax Eviolite Scyther work, because like we said, there are very few like rock mons out there. However, this draft guard division has 4 sand teams, so the Scyther might have to just watch out and try and avoid these matchups. Okay, next up we have Shadow Giraffe and the Gaelic Grim Snarls. I'm not sure what that flag is in the background. but that's
That's
his.
the Irish flag.
It's Irish, yeah.
Oh,
Ireland.
nice. Yeah, I think it's from Ireland too. So, very interesting mascot pick. And this is a stereotypical Grimsnow draft. The mons are quite unorthodox, not the mons you see every day. But to me, this is a generally very bulky and it does very good offense as well. What do you guys think?
It's really interesting. I feel like it's just missing something. I feel like this team is really lacking like true Dynamax targets. I think Toxtricity is like okay. Obviously, we've talked about it multiple times where Max Quake is going to be really popular again, and Toxtricity does not meet that criteria of being able to take one, and is also like not only is weak to it, but also doesn't like the after effects of Max Quake. You have Tangrowth here for redirection, so you can do like it plus Sigilith to set up Trick Room if you really need to, or Sigilith to set Tailwind. But like overall, I feel like this team is just really missing a true Dynamax target.
Yeah, that's kind of what gives me issues as well. It's like there's no actual real Dynamax target. We have a lot of good tools to keep Toxtricity alive with Tangrowth, with Corviknight, with Sigilith. All these kind of ground immunities and redirection for resist hits and whatnot. But not having a true, like, real Dynamax target kind of gives us some issues. Plus, it's just like, Sigilith, yes, I think Sigilith gets Rain Dance, so you can do Swift Swim, Seismitoad things, and it's fine, and you have Rain Dance to keep your Agaslash alive. I feel like Scolipede and Hitmonlee are going to have to show up for this team a lot, just because you're really lacking in physical like output otherwise.
I'm going to go the opposite way. I think this team has a fair amount of Dynamax threats. Grimmsnarl is the big one for me. You can play physical Grimmsnarl very well. I also think that Toxtricity is still a good Dynamax target. If you remove the ground types from the opposing team, you can just run over a team with Toxtricity. Aegislash is actually also a fairly decent Dynamax target. In that sword stance with its low defenses, giving it that extra boost and bulk could be pretty handy. Also Dynamaxing it in shield stance and taking a hit first could be very pivotal, especially if your opposing one is going for a Trick Room or Tailwind or something to change the speed tier for the turn afterwards, where Aegislash is like, oh, I'm in sword mode and I'm going to slap you again. But I think there's a lot of options from my point of view, or the way I think about this team. Anyway, so although the Sigilith as well is one of the rare mons to have both Tailwind and Trick Room. Very, very creative from my point of view. I'd like to have this team as well if I could play it, so that's why I gave it an 8.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with Sweet here because you really have to respect a Grimmsnarl draft. I think Sweet knows very well. There's a lot of things that Grimmsnarl can do to support the team. And in our multi-battle league, we saw Grimmsnarl and Hitmonlee played to perfection. Hitmonlee sort of threatens the fake out and the coaching onto the physical Grimmsnarl. And the clue is right in front of us. His logo is a G-Max Grimmsnarl. Then the team called Martin Sorok, they went with Hitmonlee Bullet Punch into Grimmsnarl, Pickpocket Weakness Policy, then you pickpocket Hitmonlee's Life Orb, then you Dynamax Grimmsnarl to do a lot of damage. So that can be a possible option, and I think Sweet correctly identified that. Otherwise, Detonator is also very good. I feel like these mons have generally good value in Shadow Giraffe's team. Alright, moving on. Team 8 is H. Christ's team. H. Christ also a very active member in Littleroot lessons, and he loves Mantine and Mantike, so his team name is the Mansfield Mantikes, but he didn't draft Mantike as a draft pick, but he does have a lot of queer, non-fully evolved mons in Togepi and Fletchling, And going for the Togepi as a turn 1 draft, it's kind of sus. Then followed by Melama and Elder, making this a very unorthodox and strange draft in my opinion. And look at that base stat total average, 432. This is like at length the lowest base stat total we've seen in the whole league. What do you guys think?
I think that Henry did not fully utilize his points, for one. He left 40 points on the table, and so he could have upgraded either Fletchling or Togepi into a higher tier pick, and that would not only improve that base value, that base stat value, but also I think improve the team overall. Since you have Braviary here, I don't really think you need Fletchling. So you have your Tailwind Mon, and that way you already have Redirection and Togepi, so you're able to get Tailwind up pretty consistently with Braviary in that instance, and it just puts on a lot more pressure than something like Fletchling, who, when Talonflame needs to focus Sash to be able to do its thing consistently, Fletchling just, I feel like is just a non-issue when it comes to actually drafting. I like Rotom. I like the redirection that Togepi offers, so you can Nasty Plot and or Will-O-Wisp, or really be able to fully utilize Rotom. But I feel like there's a lot missing to make this team exceptional. But I also think Henry is a good enough player that he's going to be able to take these Mons and definitely catch opponents off guard week in and week out.
So I'm going to give away a secret tech here. Eldegoss Malamar is disgusting. For those that may not know, Cotton Down triggers when anything hits Eldegoss, and it triggers for everything. So Malamar is going to be much faster than you, and you're going to be super duper slow by the time you get through this Eldegoss. And then Malamar can just baton pass out into whatever threat Henry wants, and that threat's going to probably be at +2 attack, +2 defense, and +6 speed. I would rate this team higher, other than the fact that the rest of the team feels kind of lacking. Like Carter said, we left 40 points on the table, could easily upgrade one of these Mons into an A tier pick that we may not use. This Fletchling doesn't really do a whole lot. It pulls a lot of redundancy, I feel like, with Braviary on this team as well. And also not being that fire type that its evolved form Fletchlander is, kind of just means that Fletchling just kind of lacks a lot of the offensive utility that Fletchlander and Talonflame offer.
Yeah, I think that I gave it a 7. For that tech that I wasn't going to reveal to try and see if opponents would realize
Yeah,
that.
Carl.
Fun fact, Gil already revealed that for everyone, so.
Oh, well, there we go then. I mean, the first pick Togepi was very questionable. I think you could have bought Togetic, and you guys might have even bumped that up a point just for the fact it's Togetic instead of Togepi.
Yeah, it's literally the reason it's lower is because the misutilization of your points. You have left 40 points on the table, which is essentially a whole pick.
At the same time, in Carter's view, he has 2 S tiers. So there we go.
That is one of the reasons I gave him a 6 and not a 4.
But I think overall, as the draft goes on, there will be a trade. I think we can almost guarantee that Henry may.
Yeah, there's always going to be trades.
He's. I think from Henry though, he's definitely going to think, oh. He might not realize he left 40 points. He might have just thought his last pick, because I think his last pick was a C tier. Yeah, it was Luxio. So maybe he was scrambling for a B tier Intimidate and he couldn't find one. So he just had, well, go draft Luxio and then I'll make a trade after week 1. So maybe that was his thinking. We won't know unless we ask him personally. But I think overall, he's definitely got tools to do okay. Even with, I think he just needs one or two more trades. It'll be pretty good. Things to note: he's weak to fairy. There's no fairy switching as well.
Yeah.
And he's got some good immunities, and everything else is kind of okay. I mean, he's only got 11 types, so he doesn't have a massive amount of resistances. But yeah, I think, and also the speed thing is big. He doesn't have any actual fast mons. His fastest mon is Rotom Wash, which we all know isn't amazingly fast. So even if he sets up Tailwind, he still might be slower than a lot of other teams.
Which is real rough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's going to have to rely on that Runerigus to set up a Trick Room or something. And there's nothing. I don't think anything else really gets Trick Room, does it?
No, it's
No.
Malamar,
no,
Malamar,
Malamar
Malamar,
does.
Malamar, sorry, yeah.
Malamar does.
I was about to say Malamar does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Because when in Monotype League, it was my only Dark type that could set Trick Room.
Yeah, speaking of monotype league, do you guys remember the team Saber? He used normal types, and at one of the weeks they tried fletchling with bravery, and it was pretty effective. So maybe they could play out get fletchling to set up Tailwind instead of bravery. But I feel like
and
these,
Max Bravery. Yeah, I could see it.
yeah, I'm not sure if Henry worked with Saber back in the day. But
it was
my
me.
point about these, like, yeah, it was C, right? My point about these, like, repeat typings, repeat normal flying, repeat electric, repeat water, this is really redundancy. And then Henry does have a lot of leeway to use his traits wisely and sort of improve the team. Yeah, then one more thing to also talk, like, relive LRL history is that if he switches one of these mons into a Marill, then or an Azurill, then it can work very well with that Runerigus, and that's quite a fan favorite. So next up we have Quiver Dancer, one of our newer members in LRL, with the Canadian Chinchinos, and going for a Meowstic male first pick. Notably, Quiver also gave Sweet a list of mons to draft, so Sweet kind of took that into account and came up with this draft. In general, Meowstic is really useful with Prankster screens and then other support options. And then drafting Rillaboom next is very surprising to see Rillaboom go quite late in the draft. And overall, this team seems to be generally bulky, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
Hey, I really like Rillaboom. But I unfortunately just feel like this team is a little too much all over the place. I think Archeops just does not accomplish anything on its own. You have like Kafagrigus to set Trick Room and Meowstic Male.
But Carter, Archeops has some interesting tech.
Go on.
So, you know Meowstic?
Uh-huh.
You know what move Meowstic gets?
Skill swap.
Skill swap.
There we go.
Okay.
Completely
So
make
you're still
Archeops
swapping-
redundant.
I mean, sure, but it's still an Archeops and gets one shot by like anything in the format.
With screens. Don't forget.
You can't do both at the same time.
You get one or the other, not both.
It sets
Like-
him up. You don't have to lead Archeops, you just have to have it in the back, ready to go.
So I don't know. I'm not exceptionally high on this team. I think Rillaboom's gonna have to do a ton. I think Cinchino is gonna have to be able to like actually be a decent threat here.
Yeah.
Like you have skill links so you can actually punch things. So you can do like Scarf after you and set Trick Room that way with Kafagrigus as well. But like you also have this Charger Bug and you don't really have anything to utilize battery. So like that feels kind of out of place. And again, Ditto is like the best and worst mon on your opponent's team. So it feels like this is just a little too much all over the place for me to be able to say confidently that this team is great.
Yeah, kind of in the same boat. Like this team, like there's Archeops obviously with skill swap. You could also just happen to like have your Kafagrigus hit the Archeops, or like vice versa, and somehow get Mummy on your Archeops too. Remove that defeatist. But outside of that, it's just like you're really reliant on Rillaboom and Chinchino on doing a ton of damage. You also just have Crobat for Tailwind stuff, so that's kind of cool, and Kafagrigus for just Trick Room stuff. But yeah, this team feels a little bit too much just spread out. There's no real wide focus on anything, like a lot of these other draft league teams that we've seen in this group.
I mean, I gave it
All right,
8 because I
Sweet.
drafted
Prove me
it.
wrong.
So,
Yeah,
I will.
that's just the rule.
Yeah, I can't like. I wasn't like chatting with Quiverdance the whole time, but he kind of gave me his list and things he wanted to do. So I kind of have a bit more insight in what he wants to do. I wasn't able to get a lot of his like number one drafts. Just looking at his thing now, but yeah, I got a lot of things that he liked to play with.
I see.
So he knows kind
That's
of.
all you can really do.
Yeah, so I mean, he can make trades if he wants to. That's the kind of hard thing with drafting for another player is you kind of have to remove your own mindset out and try and absorb as much as the other player wants to. And I literally don't. I've never even spoken to Quiver Dancer a lot before drafting anyway. So it was really tough for me. But I think overall, like seeing what he wants to do. I think I've done okay. Like the Charger Bug, yeah, was kind of like I left that. It was my second to last pick. Yeah, because I wanted to save the Archeops for last pick. I think it like there is some couple of neat techs that he's got going that I won't reveal. With a lot of these mons, and Cofagrigus does a whole lot of damage, by the way. You just got to get it into a place to get it protected enough, or got to trick
I
them up.
wish Cofagrigus was in Driano's ROM packs. He has Cofagrigus' Steel Ghost. It is such a nuisance.
Oh my
that,
god!
I think single-handedly would make this thing so much better.
Like, let me tell you, Agaslash's Steel Ghost typing is nuts. That would be insane.
It's ever since I've seen that, I'm just like, man, Cofagrigus could be so much better.
Yeah, interesting points throughout. I think my rating of 5 sort of brings the overall grade lower. Like then we sort of come to a neutral consensus here. I do agree with Carter and Carl in that this team seems a little bit messy, and it does have to get creative to sort of find some footing and be sure of what it wants to do. This is very rare in a draft league. I've seen a few drafts before, but this is a team without a fantasy core. There is no fairy, no dragon, no steel. At the same time, no fire mon as well. So this is something that Quiver really needs to look out for when preparing week to week, because these fairy, dragon, steel, and fire moves are extremely important. Yeah. So moving on to team number 10. This is Esther and the Italian Appletons. I'm not sure where they're from. I'm not sure if they are from Italy, but drafting Appleton as the mascot with a very cute logo. And here we have another Metagross team. So this is our resident Metagross team of the Guard division, and this time with Salamence, and generally very good mons, very solid mons to support the Metagross very well. What do you guys think?
I think Sableye Metagross is going to be able to carry this team quite a bit.
Yes.
Intimidate from Salamence can also make a big difference here. You have essentially two of the best VGC mons in Incineroar and Rillaboom, but just not fully there. Torcat and Thwackey, I think, are both actually exceptionally good in Draft League. And the fact that he has both of them on this team just means that you're going to have to play that game of, okay, where's the Eviolite? And I think that actually is very big for this team. I'm also a big fan of Beware. I know, like, historically it's never really done anything, and, like, its typing's not the best, its abilities aren't the best, but I think there are definitely going to be able to be weeks where Beware is going to be an A+.
Mm-hmm. I really like this Metagross team compared to the other Metagross team. The
Agreed.
big difference here is like we're not all in on Metagross. We do have Metagross synergies with Sableye and Intimidate on like double Intimidate for Salamence and Thwackey to help Metagross just survive more hits. But we also just Dynamax Salamence and just sweep through teams with Moxie Salamence. That's a thing we can do. We have Jellicent here to Dynamax Jellicent after a Trick Room goes up, and you can just sweep through that. I'm not sure if we have any good way to activate Weak Armor on Crustle. None that I'm aware of, but there is probably good ways to do it. That's something else you could probably do. And I do like Beware on this team. It fills a lot of the good roles that you really wanted it to do. The one downside is you just have a bunch of weaknesses for Beware, so it's not the best kind of switch in mon. It's more of a hope and pray that my opponent didn't bring answers to Beware kind of day.
So I would I rated it a little bit lower, at a 7, but I think the main thing, like, he has the Torracat and Thwackey, but I don't think you needed to draft both in this team, especially when you have Intimidate on the Salamence. Like, yeah, Torracat can be just as annoying as an Incineroar, but I think his points could have been used on another sort of pressure mon, offensively, in my view. So, like, he's got his top 2 picks, like, super duper good, like pseudo legendaries essentially, and like even his C tier picks are like kind of decent. They do a lot of damage. They can take a hit. But with Torracat Thwackey, you either put Sash on one and Eviolite on the other, and that's, if you're taking them both, that is, and that's kind of it. One of them's going to be super weak and one of them's not. The Jellicent's there, solid pick as well. Does a lot for this team, I think. Can counter Trick Room, can set up Trick Room. But yeah, I think overall, like, it's a solid draft. But yeah, it kind of needs to make sure that the Sableye Metagross can just kind of sweep teams, in my opinion.
Yeah, good points overall. Interestingly, Mocha's team, the Midtown Metagross, right, from Cotton Division, has the same rating, 7.5. So this goes to show how much we respect Metagross teams. I think they are pretty average. I think this team, to me, actually is better. I think I would have given it a higher rating if I looked at it a little bit harder, because Sableye Metagross should be better than something like Dusclops Metagross. Also, both teams have a Torracat, so this seems to be a very good call, I guess. And to me, Torracat and Thwackey will put in a lot of work for this team, and I do hope to see them do well. I'm like countering Sweet in that there are sometimes where Thwackey can just come in with a choice band set or something more unique that can steal games. Yeah, because I've used Thwackey before. Alright, next up we have Ted and the Pummeling Licky Lickies. Ted has been in a lot of different draft leagues, and I've seen him do his run throughout these draft leagues. Also, in the last week he did what's that? An exhibition match with Wendell, I think. Yeah, and he posted it in our self club. So coming off of a strong first pick in Primarina, and then going with Mian Shao and his mascot Licky Licky, and in general, I feel like this is a good stuffs team with a very interesting Fairy Dragon Steel core. What do you guys think?
You mentioned his fantasy core, but I actually want to talk about his Firewater Grass core here with Primarina, Flareon, and Maractus.
Nice.
I actually really like Maractus on this team. The fact that you can just like do surf things with Primarina next to it and then fire off like pretty decent special attacks off of Maractus is pretty great. The fact that you're able to switch in on the water types that do threaten your Flareon is also great, as well as Steelix to an extent too, because Steelix has that base 200 defense, but special defense of like 50. Is that correct?
Yep.
Swede would know. He's the one who drafted it last.
Yep.
So I actually really like
65, I think, but yeah, low anyway.
Yeah, close enough. But I think this team is pretty alright. I think personally, I do like the last team more with the Metagross team, just because I feel like it's a little more cohesive. But I think that the Mons on this team are definitely going to be able to pull their own weight individually.
yeah, the cores are there. It hits all the right buttons. It's got good threats. It's got good supports. This is a very middle of the road, like this is going to top cut most likely kind of team. Like you play it, what you could almost just be an average player and play with this team, and you're probably going to do well with it. There's a couple weird C tier picks. I'm not the biggest fan of Spirit Tomb here. It feels kind of off. It feels kind of like we kind of just like wanted a immunity to like normal and like psychic, but I don't know why we would want that. And then the Lycanroc Midnight form, I'm not sure what it does for this team either, besides just being like extra water weaknesses and extra grass weaknesses.
It has no guard.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Let every move hit this.
It has no guard.
Yeah,
I did it.
you did it. Good job. Yeah, this is like I said, it's a solid 17 for me for sure. I like Alakazam too. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think kind of I gave it an 8 actually. I kind of felt I was a bit generous on this one actually, to be fair. Lack of tailwind does worry me, especially when we have the Lycanroc, which it's not the fast, it's the slowest of the Lycanrocs. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, Midnight is the slowest.
Yeah,
Totally.
so
Yeah.
you've picked the slowest Lycanroc. Dragonite's not exactly fast, but it does get max airstream. Primarina's very middling. Yeah, so if you're playing a speed game, you're gonna have a hard time. So it looks like you're just gonna have to play the bulk game. But luckily he's got some good bulk mons. With like the Licky Licky, the Steelix. Spirit Tomb is fairly bulky as well. Has 3 immunities, 1 weakness, and can take a hit. So I think like the Spirit Tomb was like a decent pickup. Again, it's one of those unknown ones. Not a lot of people use it. So I don't even know what it does myself. So if I was ever to come up against it, I'll find out what support moves it gets. I'm sure.
Sick shiny.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
There we go.
let me tell you.
And yeah, I think this team does really well into other teams with the Licky Licky as well, because it can just sit there and just switch off your weather and say, yeah, you have to go through me first before I allow you to go fast. So,
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, very interesting points overall. I think one team that this team might be lacking is that it doesn't have tailwind. It might have to always just rely on Dragonite going for max airstream. So against opponents, hyper offensive teams, I'm not sure if this team can fare that well. And then it might have to just rely on Spiritomb trying to go for a Trick Room. I really like Carter's point about the Emeractus. Maybe with the Storm Drain, it can protect certain mons well. I think Scarf Lycanroc has been a very valid strategy I've seen throughout other draft leagues with No Guard Stone Age or No Guard Rock Slide doing a ton of damage. And we do know that Rock, can be a very useful type against quite a lot of these teams. Okay, let's move on to Team 12 really quickly. NJ from our daycare PokeCup Little Cup server with the Celebes Celebi, and look at the order, right? Cinderace is not his first pick. He managed to pick up Gotitel and Azumarill, forming sort of a Perish Trap core. I think shoutouts to the rest of the Perish Trap teams that I didn't mention. There was a Gotorita and a Politoed, and there was another Gotitel in Cotton Draft. Then followed by Azumarill, and then finally Cinderace. That's very surprising for Cinderace to go in his third pick. Yeah, and then the rest of the team seems to be pretty okay. I don't really agree with quite a lot of these unorthodox C tier picks, and we have 2 very funny non-fully evolved mons that we don't really see every day. What do you guys think?
So I know, piggybacking off your C tier like talk here, Morpeko is like very okay. It obviously, like, it can do some very cool things, especially if it's backed up with like decent speed control. But the problem is like there's no actual like tailwind on this team, and when you have a base 97 speed stat here with Morpeko, you just want to go faster so you can actually outspeed some bigger threats. Granted, you do have like Hawlucha and you have Cinderace who can both max airstream, but I think like Morpeko is very okay. Obstagoon, I think, actually pairs well with Cinderace and that Hawlucha and Sandaconda to an extent, too. Just being able to, like, deter off the Intimidators in the format. Celio, I think, is pretty bad. I don't really see Celio doing anything here. Even holding an Eviolite, it probably still gets one-shot by a ton of things. And Lickitung having Cloud9, I actually think is pretty unique, especially since this division, like you said, has 4 Sand teams, a Rain team. I believe it has a Sun team. I know it has
Gut
Hail.
doesn't. Yeah, Gut
doesn't
has
have a Sun.
Hail.
Okay.
One Hail, 2 Rain, and 4 Sand.
Yeah, so I mean, 7 out of 20 teams, right? So, I mean, there's a non-zero chance that Lickitung actually is going to be able to come and do a ton of work. So, overall, I think this seems okay. I think Gothitelle Azumarill is really interesting, especially if you can trap your opponent's early game, or more importantly, clean up late game against your opponents. You have potential for, like, weakness policy Sandaconda things next to Azumarill to, like, Aqua Jet them. Not the best strategy, but it is something you technically can do. Overall, I think it's okay. I think it's going to have to be piloted really well to be able to exceed expectations.
Yeah, in the same boat here. It's Perish Trap is going to be hard. It's harder to pilot effectively. So a lot of the points that we would normally give teams is really reliant on the player optimizing and just using the team really, really well. Car over here trying to sneeze on me.
No, it's yawning.
Oh. This later pick Cinderace reminds me a lot of Captain Unova's team in the Cotton group. Getting that 3rd pick Charizard as just kind of this power pick for your team. It just kind of fits really well with the rest of the things that NG's trying to do here. I like Lickitung and I like Obstagoon a lot more. Pico is fine. It's electric coverage, has fake out and some stuff like that. So I feel like Morpico's an okay C tier pick if you're like needing electric types. I don't agree with the Celio. It's why it's at a 6 instead of a 7 for me. Hawlucha doesn't have any really great synergies going on.
Yeah, I can't find it.
Like Mode Breaker is really, really cool, so it's like you get to do stuff with that, and that's kind of nice. But you're probably wanting to do Unburden things more, and it's going to be a little bit harder to do that, and requires a little bit more setup than compared to just like a terrain like everybody else has been doing with stuff like that.
Hawlucha's tech is the Moss item, you gain special attack when you get hit by a water
Absorb Bulb.
Absorb Bulb, that's it. You get,
Aqua Jet, right?
Aqua Jet into Absorb Bulb. I think that's the tech.
That's the best one, yeah.
That's the best one I can find anyway.
But the thing is, Absorb Bulb boosts your special attack.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. That's why I said it was the
Special
best thing I could find.
Literally just after the speed boost. That's all I care about.
But touching on that, it's very physical offensive. I think you've only got like 1 or 2 special main threats in this team. Apart from that, everything seems to be physical, so quite easy to prep for. Even with the Obstagoon being there, you can just set up Steel Spikes, you can set up Reflects. He's only got 2 steel resistances, no weaknesses though. But I still wouldn't mind. I mean, Cinderace, do you count it as a fire type with all its type changing? Because it could be weak one day, it can be resistant the next. So I'm
it could be a normal type.
It could be it could be a dark type, could be electric.
It could
type.
always be fire because they're playing Blaze.
Yeah,
they're
all that.
Cinderace.
There you go. So unless they're playing Blaze, Cinderace can be like a lot of types anyway. So there's only one real resist, which is the Morpico, and the Morpico doesn't take a hit very well, as far as I know. So it probably still doesn't want to take a Steel Spike. But overall, if NG can get the kind of the bulk sorted and he can kind of get through any physical walls, I think he's going to do relatively well. To note as well, the Sandaconda and Lickitung don't synergize very well, because you don't the opponents don't take the sand chip as well as you. So just be careful with that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But he's got a solid draft, got a very good top mons, and see how he can play out with these kind of middling ones as well. No tailwind as well, obviously a big thing. So yeah, that kind of what brings it down to a 7 for me. Oh, and fairy weakness. we go.
Yes. Yeah, fairy and to some extent fighting, but not all of these C tiers would come. And I would think bug. So NJ kind of has to be aware of opponents' random bug type coverage. You know, like something like Mega Horn X Scissor. Then for me, I rated this team a little bit high because I do respect that Perish Trap mode. Not only in Gotitel but also in Sandaconda, and that could do pretty well. And the team kind of covers Gotitel's weakness. Let's just close one eye and not look at the bug weakness, but it does cover the ghost and the dark weakness, almost always allowing Gotitel to stay on the field for 2 or 3 turns. Then the Cinderace forms this like fairy dragon steel core, like the steel being the Cinderace and dragon being executor, and then fairy being Azumarill. Anything that can be quite effective, and that at the same time also forms that fire water grass core. So I thought this synergy could be interesting. However, instead of going fast, most of the time I feel like NJ might want to go slow. Yeah. Then one last thing, I think Celio can be very niche, but I do agree with you guys. Like I don't really see much use for it. And then Ligitang is almost as bulky as Porygon 2, but I do know that Porygon 2 is bulkier. Okay, next up we have, that's my team, with my Poggers first pick as my favorite mon of all time, Sandshrew. Then I sort of went around there and tried to draft a Sand team because I do know that like people are just going to gun down like my Sandshrew, so I might as well draft another ground type mon to sort of keep things simple. And at first people thought that I was going to draft a mono ground draft, but that's not what I do. And this is my first time drafting a team without redirection, so I kind of feel a little bit vulnerable. Otherwise, there are some unique things that I want to do for these mons, and I do hope that there can be some synergy, not only in paper but also in practice. What do you guys think?
So I don't want to give away like all your secrets here, just because like this team looks super cool on paper. I'm a big fan of like the Stoutland Hippo Excadrill core. Just being able to do like Sand Force plus Sand Rush on Stoutland is pretty great. Rabombi being able to speed swap onto something like Wishy Washy makes it a huge threat in and of itself. Being able to do like Surf Wishy Washy next to Cradilly no, we don't have we don't have Trick Room, right?
No.
Okay. So like being able to like surf your Cradilly with Wishy Washy to give it a +1 is like okay. Not the best thing you could do, but it is a thing you can do. I actually really like this team, and because I know it's you, it's going to be like a 12 out of 10. So
yeah, the writing joke we had when Carter and I were rating this is like whatever we rate it, you have to add like 5 points to it afterwards. So it could be like a 13 out of 10 and it'll be fine. You have a lot of cool synergies. I like the whole Hippowdon Excadrill thing. Plus you have Cradilly here just like to absorb all the water type attacks that they're going to want to spam into them. You also have Wishy Washy to kind of switch in on it. The reason it's not a little bit higher is mainly just like your tools are a little bit lacking. Like you mentioned, there's no real Tailwind, there's no real Trick Room, so you're kind of locked into your speeds, and like you're real reliant on Excadrill just going fast, or Stoutland going super duper fast, or just like hoping that your opponent just sets Trick Room and then you just packed Cradilly and Wishy Washy in the back. Otherwise, like we said, this is like we rated it about as fairly as we could, but we know how good you are, so like these 8s are technically like 13s and 14s, so you're fine.
I'm so flattered, guys.
Yeah, I think that's mainly my 9. I gave a bit too much respect to Evan on this one, but If it was me in this team, it would be like a 3, but quite easily. But yeah, Evan's not a draft league champion by no fluke anyway. So I quite like actually. Like it's funny. Like Sandshrew can be fun. You have Sandville, right? So you could just like
Mm-hmm.
stick on a bright powder as well and just go try and hit me.
You can't hit me.
Yeah,
like
that's actually a very good idea.
like try and hit me, guys. Come on, it's just a Sandshrew. But yeah, I think like overall, like you, yeah, the offense is there definitely. The defenses are there as well to some extent. But it's just kind of trying to take that hit. And if you take too many hits before you're able to get your offense down, then yeah, you can. I feel like you can be overrun once you get behind. But I think it's trying to get you behind in the first place is going to be difficult because you've got so much bulk already before intimidate. But yeah, no real tailwind, no real trick room does hurt you as well. So I think like on like fair reflection, like I'd probably actually give it like a 6 or a 7, probably lingering towards like 6.5 basically. Like normally, but yeah, there we go. I gave you some respect. You get a 9.
Thanks. Yeah, I think riding off Sweet's point, like having no tailwind and no trick room reliably sort of hurt the team. Therefore, I need to come up with very creative ways to maintain my speed control. I think the speed swap on the Rebombi is a given, and I think that's something that opponents are definitely gonna prepare for. And I can play some mind games and probably do something different. I didn't really think of not having a trick room option, which is why I drafted wishy-washy, like a very slow, reliable mon in Trick Room to sort of be a Trojan horse, just in case someone sets up Trick Room so that he can get in and Dynamax and try and make an impact. Then I did realize that I have a water weakness, therefore I purposely drafted Toxicroak and Credility to sort of add some insurance, like buying insurance policies to protect my sand users and more importantly, protect the very important S tier mon in Excadrill. Yeah, thanks for all your comments, guys. Okay,
I'm excited
next
to see
up
how you
we
do.
have. Yeah, I'm also curious as to how I'm gonna perform because this is something that's very out of my comfort zone. I don't usually draft repeat typings. Yeah. Okay,
It's
next
the
up
first
we
time
have.
that Evan doesn't top cut.
Oh
That's a
no.
fall.
Okay. Here we have Guard and the Gatorsburg Rookies. The third team, I believe, with no S tier draft. And this is very similar to another Hard Trick Room team that we saw with Escavalier. And Guard just went straight for all these A tiers and B tiers. And I would say this is a generally bulky, good stuffs team. What do you guys think?
I really like all of the A tier picks here with Chandelure, Hitmontop, Excavalier. I think like individually they look weird, but when you're able to pair them all together, it actually makes a really synergistic team. Being able to intimidate the mons that like Chandelure fears, being able to switch in on the fire type attacks with Chandelure from Excavalier is great. You have like a fast mode if you want to be able to go with like Noivern. Golisopod can do a ton of damage and then be able to come back in later and do it again. Aromatisse is like the one thing I'm just like, this is kind of okay. Obviously, it's going to be able to set Trick Room, but that's like it in Aurora Veil. Is it Aroma Veil? Is that right?
Yep.
Yes.
Aroma Veil, yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm not a fan of the C tier mons, and I think you could probably swap both of them to make this team a little more synergistic.
Mhm.
Just because I don't think like Kadabra is all that impressive, and I think Shiftry is like bottom of the barrel.
One of the big things that stands out for me is if you don't get Trick Room up, or if you're trying to do Tailwind, you have no good switch in for max airstreams. Like you're going to get it's a neutral hit on most of your team and super effective hit on a couple of your tools that you like to use, like your Golisopod, like your Hitmontop. your grass type and shiftery. And just like if you get outsped after you've set up Tailwind, you're just not doing your thing anymore, and your opponent just gets to kind of take over the game. The other thing is like I'm not sure like damage wise where we're going to actually come from. It's just like Golisopod can do things early, but like first impression is what Golisopod's known for. And if it gets a second hit off, then it's really, really good. But a lot of the times your opponent's just going to double into it and make you forced to switch it out to where it doesn't actually get to do that. And then you got to pull it back in so you can do it again and try to get going again. And it just relieves a lot of the pressure that a Golisopod immediately gets to put off. So I'm not as high on this draft. It feels a little broken because of our speed tiers just like so drastic, but then our middle tiers aren't always the best offensive tools. Like Chandelure is like the best offensive tool we have in that middle speed tier.
Yeah, I think this is where I started to get tired at night doing the rest of the ratings. I did think I gave this team a bit too much respect. Not being able to take a max airstream well at all. It does have some like special offense as well, so I don't have a problem with its offensive. There's a lot of mix in it. The big thing is I'm not sure why this team just didn't go hard Trick Room, because the Noivern does seem out of place. Like, yeah, you can set up Tailwind, that's pretty cool, but nothing. Like,
does Tailwind really help you?
It doesn't. I don't think. Yeah, because the opponent could just set Tailwind itself and just go, okay,
faster than you.
I'm back to normal speed again, and I'm still faster. So great. Or even just get a +1 and like a max airstream, and you're like, yeah, I'm faster than most of your team again, and you have Noivern for offense, which isn't great. Yeah, it's a difficult one. I definitely wouldn't give it an 8 if I looking at it again. It's nowhere near an 8 for me. You can counter the weather. It's got the Dramper again, so weather in this group does seem pretty good to counter. So there's definitely got some things going for it. But I just think an extra Trick Room mode. I mean, Kadabra and Chandelure, and I think that's your Trick Room ones, isn't it?
And Aromatisse.
Aromatisse as well, yeah. So Aromatisse is like your only like kind of good Trick Room one here, because outside like you don't really want to set Trick Room with Kadabra. You don't really want to set Trick Room with Chandelure. It's more just like a backup in case they go fast and you can say, no, we're going slow. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Gad does. I think it's got a lot of tools, but just needs to kind of play well to make use of it.
I'll be interested to see something like Tailwind Chandelier, maybe Dynamic Chandelier, to just do a lot of damage. Could be interesting. But I feel that Guard would almost always want to rely on Trick Room week by week to try and win games. Yeah, I do agree with you guys with that C tier pick. And then I still want to emphasize this again. I think Sweet has been going on about this. Weakness to max airstream, right? But no resist, no good switch-ins. Something strange. I think this format of no restricted and no legendaries kind of forced a lot of teams to draft Stray fighting mons, bug mons, and dark mons, and then maybe the steel mons are few and far to come by. I think this is the third team already that we have seen today with a glaring weakness to fighting, to flying and no good switch-ins. But granted, maybe Shift 3, Golit support, and Hitmontop on this team, not all of them will come into the battle, and maybe Guard can just pick one or two. However, still no switch-ins into flying moves is a bit detrimental. Alright, next up we have Dan Chunks and his team called Yoshi City with no mascots. Yeah, but this team is threatening. It's just screaming leads, right, all over the place, threatening you with all sorts of good leads and very oppressive strategies that almost always cannot be stopped. So this team to me feels like a team that likes the dynamics on turn 1 and try its best to steamroll. What do you guys think?
So this is honestly, I think a little similar to Cyanide's over in the Cotton division, but I think where Cyanide has a bunch of different pairings that all do very well, Dan
Mhm.
has a lot of offensive pairings here that are kind of missing. Like you have Tauros plus Frostlass, which can be good. You have Arcanine plus Dracoloak for beat up, so you can do justified beat up things. You have Porygon plus Togetic to be able to redirect those hits, so Porygon can do a ton of damage. Um, Past that, like your Mons don't really care about their abilities too much when it comes to like coughing being able to neutralize and gas them away. Altaria being able to shut off weather thanks to Cloud9 is also fine. And like you could like have Lopunny be able to give away like an assault vest onto a support mon thanks to Klutz or something like that. But overall, I think this team is really heavily stacked on its A tier picks, and I don't think that like Porygon Z specifically, I don't think you're going to be able to bring every week. But just because the amount of pressure that PZ puts on, I think you have to be able to respect it, and that's why it's still in the S tier.
Yeah, like it's very reminiscent, like you said, of Cyanide's team. Of there's a bunch of really powerful pairings, and it can take over games. But these pieces all feel a little suboptimal sometimes. Like this Dracloak here as your beat up user, it's not a Dragapult. You're not going to outspeed everything, and it's a little bit easier to catch up to Dracloak and deal with Dracloak before it gets to do its thing for this Arcanine. Togetic, yes, gets to hold Eviolite, but also just doesn't do a ton of things like Togekiss does. It can't be super duper offensive like a Togekiss can be as well. So, like, if they start to snarl things, then PZ and Togetic are going to kind of just start to suffer a lot there. Tauros Frostlass is like your probably the best combo you have drafted by far. It's just like this is the thing, it's going to do its thing. You have to learn to deal with it kind of situation. Overall, though, it's a solid team. This is probably one of the best double S tiers we've seen so far, in my
Mhm.
opinion. I'm
No.
still not the biggest fan of these double
Yep.
S tier picks, though. So that's why it's at a 7 for me.
Yeah, I think the big thing is that this Arcanine is going to be putting in overwork.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to need to get intimidated. It's going to need to get snarls off. It's I think too much is reliant on this Arcanine in this draft here. I mean, you've touched on the obvious threats there. There's no defense in this team apart from Eviolite Togetic, so you can
Which
like
is not the best defense, but
yeah. So if you, I mean, there's a lot of speed in this team though. So if you're able to outspeed, you will just. I think you can just run over this team. There's
Mm-hmm.
no real tailwind. Like you have max strike on Porygon Z that you probably be able to go first unless it's Togetic. But you can just use max airstream to counteract max strike. Speaking of max airstream, no weaknesses, no resists. So you feel free
Okay.
to just slap
Just
max
spam them.
airstream, and you're gonna hit him. You're gonna hit him for neutral damage, whatever you do. So I think Dan's gonna get outsped. Which is ironic to say because he has like 5 mons over 100 speed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then the two after that are still 90 and 95. So I think Dan's going to need to play really well with his Arcanine alongside his other threats as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, overall, I would say I would coin this team as a stereotypical hyper offense team that really needs to lead correctly or dynamics the correct mon to try its best to steamroll. A lot of similarities with this team and a lot of previous teams in that this is our third and final S tier, double S tier draft that Carl has identified. And this team has a lot of weird stacked typings, like stacked normal types, stacked flying types. Yeah, if your opponent simply goes for tailwind and airstream, it can easily outspeed you. If you go for max strike, the opponent can easily switch out and switch back in, right, to maintain their speed. And the double dragon is also a bit strange. And one more thing that I haven't shouted out with this team and a previous team that had, I think Henry's team that had a lot of rock type weaknesses. There's a glaring 5 mons with rock type weaknesses here. Granted, they won't come into each match, but you are in a division with 4 sand teams with a lot of other mons that can easily go for max rock 4. So I think Dan really has to be careful here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think then Dan also sort of like hates grass types with a passion, with 6 mons resistant to grass. I think there could be some switch ups. I think Dan can make some good trades along the way. Okay, moving
Don't
quickly
fear the
on.
Rillaboom.
Yeah. Moving quickly on, we have our second Garchomp team with Captain Auro, NJ's partner in crime in the Little Cup server, with a team name called Garchomp's Goliaths. So these are Garchomp's Goliaths. Yeah, there is not the Goliath of Garchomp, but it's Garchomp's Goliaths. And drafting Volcarona first, going straight for that redirection, then still managing to pick up Garchomp makes this very deadly with the Garchomp plus the Swords Dance combination, and then picking up a lot of other good stuff spawns, which I feel do synergize very well and can form a very solid team. I think we gave this team quite a high ranking. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I actually really, really like this team. The fact that you have redirection plus Garchomp so you can sword stance things is great. You have Bisharp to be able to like want your opponent to not intimidate you is also fantastic. You have Tailwind in the form of Aerodactyl. Jinx is just like hyper annoying when it comes to playing against it. Alchemy just does anything and everything you need it to when it comes to decorating things. My big complaints here are like Gallade, Dartrix, and Greedent. But like my big thing is like Greedent feels good if you get to do its thing, like if you get the belly drum. But when you compare it to like other Trick Room Mons, it feels like one of the weaker ones, comparing it to like what everyone else is going to be able to do under Trick Room. You also have like Shell Smash Costa things alongside Solid Rock, so you can just like negate the fence drops that way. I think this team is phenomenal.
Yeah, this is a very Garchomp centric team, and you can tell from the draft that this team is revolving around that Garchomp. Garchomp is the center of this team, and everything around it is there to support it. Jinx is really underutilized. It's really, really cool with its unique dry skin ability plus just lovely kiss. Aerodactyl gets to do tailwind things, and we don't have to worry about earthquaking our rock type at all. I feel like this team would be at a 9 if our anti-intimidate also just didn't get blown up by our own earthquake if we wanted to use it. Which it feels kind of bad, but it's sometimes you have to do that. The Dartrix feels kind of like a rushed pick, I feel like. It's just like, oh, I need a grass type, I'm just going to grab this one. Maybe there wasn't a very good grass type option left, or they just didn't think about it. But Dartrix feels kind of... Okay, so yeah, Dartrix feels kind of like just slapped on here, like not really important. So the Firewater Grass Core...
I'm not sure if it's a running joke, because Auro drafted Volcarona first, then I said, oh, there's a 4x weakness. Then Garchomp, 4x weakness, then Bishop, also 4x weakness. Then I said, what other mon has different typings but still have a 4x weakness? And I said Dartrix. Then I was like, to draft Dartrix in the end. So this is probably the
there's
team
a bunch of them.
This is the team with the most 4x weaknesses in this whole league.
Yeah, like Costa here has a 4x weakness to grass. I do like that we just have this alchemy to do decorate things on any of our targets and just make them actual threats. I do like that a lot. The one fear is just they steal your decorate and then just run you over, because a lot of your Pokemon aren't the bulkiest. That's one of the big fears. You were staring up at the wall, so I was just like, is someone staring at us?
No, I'm staring at the wall. I can zone out when I want to, Carl.
I'm just scared because I'm just I can't see behind me. I'm just like, what's going on? But yeah, it's just I like the alchemy. Free direction's powerful in draft league though, so you have to play around that for sure. Um, but yeah, I like this draft a lot. That's why I have it at 8. If it had a little bit better of a C tier pick, maybe a better Firewater Grass Core, I could definitely put it at a 9. But as it sits right now, it's definitely an 8.
Yeah, I think it was coming down to the 2 cores. It didn't feel the strongest in my view. Like, yeah, Caracosta can do Caracosta things, but we don't see it for a reason. So, not a really good water type. Dartrix is, yeah, okay, cool. So really, you've only got Volcarona as its only kind of main typing core. The Dragon Fairy Steel seems kind of solid. The Alcremie does also get access to things like Baby Doll Eyes, so it gives you that priority attack drop as well, which could be handy into a lot of these teams that are actually, I think, defensively weak. Yeah, a lot of these mons are defensively weak, so having that, even though there's no Intimidate on this team, he does have that priority attack drop, which can be useful. Overall, gave it a 7. I didn't feel like it was like an amazing draft. I just thought it was literally just Garchomp, Volcarona, Bishop things, and maybe Jinx for a little bit of playing about, like just being annoying and say, yeah, you're gonna have to get through me if you want to win this game. And after that, there's nothing really much else that I'm worried about in this team. So if you can get through like 2 of those 4 mons, you can have a good time, I feel.
Interesting points. Yeah, for me, I just think that a lot of these mods kind of have you, but it does seem, as we discussed, to be more leaning towards a top-heavy team. We could almost always expect, Garchomp, Volcarona, Bishop to always come, and then a few mons by the side to support, and these mons might rotate weekly. Yeah. Then overall, I gave it an 8.5. I think it's a pretty decent draft. All right. Next up, we have our final team with a lot of a lot of types collected. So this is Setsuku and the Akina Vocalists, and this is our resident Colossal team. That's not the most, like, it's not the most obvious, right? Because Dragapult Colossal will be a double S tier draft, and that might be a bit too expensive. So we go with the next best option, the very famous Series 6 combo in Sneasel and Colossal, and then sneakily drafting a Quillfish near the end of draft for an Aqua Jet option. This team to me seems very threatening, and opponents really need to prep for it well. If not, he can easily steamroll. It's the kind of phenomenon where you know it's coming, right? But the question is, can you stop it or not? What do you guys think?
When we were going over our rankings, Carl and I, one of the first things that came up when I saw this team is, oh, I forgot Colossal's a thing. So just being able to see the immense power that Colossal brings over the last year that it's been a threat, and just transitioning from that to Series 10 where Dynamax is no longer a thing, so Colossal no longer exists. It just really just resonated that I had already ignored everything going on with Colossal, and it just made me think that it wasn't a thing anymore. I think that this team is just phenomenal. I love everything that this team has going on, and you just have to respect Colossal so much that it's just going to leave you weak to something else.
Yeah, Colossal, this would definitely be a 10 if there weren't 20 points sitting on the bench and just waiting to be used. Could have definitely swapped one of these C's and picked up another B easily, and I feel like there might have been plenty of other Bs to pick up where you can just like find a little bit of a better Pokemon. Maybe Clink Clank can just kind of come out and you can find a better Steel type in B. I'm not sure what was left in the draft at the time. But leaving 20 points on the table kind of makes it feel like it's not a perfect 10, but more closer to like a 9 or an 8.5. I like the Hydreigon as this anti-ground Pokemon to switch in. I do like Unpheasant as well. Sneasel Colossal is something we saw in Series 6 a ton. Being immune to fake out there means that your opponent has to get real creative on how to actually stop this from going up a lot of the time. And it's going to put a lot of pressure on your opponent during prep.
Yeah, I went for an 8 just because of the fact that we have been playing against colossal teams for since it came out. People know how to play against it. So I have a feeling that people might have just, when they saw the colossal pick, because I think it was the first pick for Setsuku, wasn't? Oh, that was second.
Second, yeah.
So once it was picked second, because it was coming back up the draft anyway, people were like, right, I need a colossal answer. So then everyone started picking colossal answers from that. So I think a lot of teams have prepped well for it, from what I can see. So it's whether that Setsuku can play around getting the colossal into position to sweep the game, because I don't think leading at turn 1's gonna do a lot for him. But it could just be used as bait. It could be just say, "Yo, I'm gonna go lead Diggersby and go sweep that thing instead." So yeah, we could.
Exactly.
Yeah, so yeah, he's got the immediate pressure is there. So that's why I have given it an 8, because the pressure's definitely there. But it's whether or not the opponents are able to play around it. And if Setsuku's able to play the mind games of when the colossal appears.
Yeah, such a good point. I think as players, as VGC players, with Colossal winning, was that 2 or 3 Players Cups in a row, right? I think we have
3, yeah.
Yeah, it was 3. So we have adapted enough, well enough to always prepare good strategies to fight against Colossal. One thing to also note, I think is the third team with 16 total types, and that's very impressive to collect a lot of impressive types to sort of give your team very good synergy and make it very unpredictable for opponents. Because one thing to shout out here is that there are 7 types that have immunities, and Setsuku is one of the rarer coaches that managed to draft them all. Therefore, you have sort of like a normal type switch-in, you have a fighting move switch-in, you have a dark move, like a psychic switch-in, you see. So I think with a lot of good creativity and good prep, Setsuku should be able to do well. One last thing to note is that this team has what I call the 6 PSS, the 6 Pokemon slot syndrome, in that all of these mons can sort of come into the battle, but Setsuku needs to only bring 6. And the question is, does he bring the correct 6? Does he bait you into preparing for Colossal but not bringing it at all? That can be very useful for him in terms of the prep phase when coming to strategy. Yeah. Okay. Next up, 18 with Yasha VGC with the MK Mimikyus. And same as Carl, here we have our Snorlax Mimikyu team of the Guard division. What do you guys think?
I actually like this team. It's like alright. Obviously, I have it ranked lower than Carl's just because I think that it's not fully utilizing everything that it could be. But being able to have like redirection plus Snorlax means that you can get a Billy Drum off and not have to worry about Trick Room and just blow up your opponent instead. I think looking at some of these like middle picks, I don't think Komodo is particularly impressive. Scorch can do things. I'm not entirely convinced that it's going to, though. I actually really like Vikavolt. Unfortunately, on this team, it doesn't have a ton of free switch-ins. Like, you only have, one ground weakness with Lantern? Mm-hmm. And I guess Scorch is neutral, but yeah, so not being able to get, a free switch-in on, a Max Quake to completely punish your opponent isn't the best. But under Trick Room, Vikavolt can be a huge threat that I actually think is pretty underutilized.
I like the team. It's very similar to mine. They ended up getting redirection, which is really, really cool. One of the big issues that we've mentioned it a million times at this point, the Airstream weakness. This team has 4 weaknesses to Airstream. That and one, you have one resist in Lantern, but let me tell you, you probably are going to regret getting hit by an Airstream, period, at this point. Pokemon I looked at drafting are things like, I looked at drafting Scorch earlier on. Claydol was on my list of things I thought about drafting too. I obviously drafted Lantern, so they ended up drafting a lot of the same things that I did. I don't know if they looked and then like, oh, this is like cool, and then they put their own spin on it. I'm not sure, but it gets about a 7. There's trick room things there. It's a good trick room like support squad around it. You've got a special attacker and a physical attacker in Vikavolt and Snorlax. There's just some like your Firewater Grass Core isn't the greatest. I'm not sure what Blossom does on this team at all, really, besides just be a base 50 speed grass type.
I think we said that in the last division too. It's just like I don't know what Blossom's actually doing on this team.
Yeah, I think that was on another trick room team too.
I think so.
Yeah. I think Blossom was a last pick, so it may just be that Yasha was just trying to fill out something. Just saying, oh,
Find
I need
a grass
type. Yeah, find a grass type, put it on. Overall, I kind of rank this. I think I ranked this Highland Cars one just purely for the fact that we do have the redirection. And also things with the center scorch could be pretty good to use. I think white smoke, does it stop the drops on?
It's clear body.
Yes,
It's clear body.
It's clear body. It's just for you, right? But it's not for your
Correct.
partner.
No.
Just for you,
It's
yeah.
only for Center Scorch.
Yeah,
Okay,
just Center Scorch.
Yeah, okay. So okay. So not as good as I thought it was then, but still able to trap mons is a good ability as well. So if he's able to use the G-Max variant pretty well. Phalanx obviously with the Defiant ability can dissuade people using the Intimidates as well. So I think overall he's got kind of a really good Snorlax based team with backup sweepers if needed with the Como and the Center Scorch.
Nice. I think Clefable would be the linchpin of this team, really allowing their mons to set up, be it setting up Belly Drum on Snorlax Como-O, or setting up that Omni Boost on Como-O, or what's that? Coil on Scorch. Yeah, then I went to check the similarities of that other team with Blossom. It was Noah's team, Almost Good Enough Gaming, with Blossom and Claydol at the same time, and they have a Crustle, whereas over here we see a Vikavolt. So I think these C-tier picks tend to be the mons that our coaches try and lean towards. Maybe there aren't a lot that are too desirable, so they always end up with mons like Blossom. Yeah. Otherwise, just always watch out for that max airstream weakness, because being able to stall out Trick Room against this team can be quite easy, or try and stop Trick Room from mons like Mimikyu or Claydol. Yeah, but nice. It's very nice to see another like Snorlax Mimikyu team. Hopefully, Yasha can put in some work for the guard division. Next up, we have our fellow mod, Jiggly, with a Duran team. This is the only Duran team in the whole league. And he actually managed to draft this these strong A-tier picks, right? Not as the first pick, or this is Jiggly's strategy. Like, we've seen him do it in previous drafts and also in the multi-battle league, going for low value picks first, like going for the B tiers, going for the C tiers, then finally honing in on that A tier or S tier that can suit him well. Yeah, notably this is also no S tier draft. Yeah, what do you guys think?
I love Durant. To be completely honest, I think being able to pair it with Milotic here as well, just so you can like deter, intimidate. Again, we've talked about it before. I think that's really important. Also being able to pair it with like Rapidash here is insane, to be completely honest. Being able to just absorb all the fire type attacks that would normally destroy Durant and just give Rapidash that little extra boost of damage that it's going to be able to utilize is great. Jigglypuff being able to have Friend Guard here is pretty exceptional as well. Just being able to add a little more bulk to the rest of your team where needed. From there, I feel like the team kind of falls off. Like Lorantis is fine being able to just like click superpower continuously and like again deter intimidates into it. And like I think that Musharna being able to set your trick room, especially next to like Lipard for fake out, can be fine. The problem is like your trick room mode is not the best. You have like Berserker, Lorantis I guess technically thrives under trick room. Then you have a Crawdont here as well, so it's not the best trick room mode, but I think it's functional.
I would rate this higher if we had a guaranteed like a tailwind or something to where we know Durant's going to outspeed everything, like no matter what. The best we can do is like Electro Web off Jolteon. Does Jolteon get Electro Web?
It does.
Yep.
Okay.
And then
Like, that's like the-
T-Wave on Lipard.
Yeah, like those are like your best speed control options, but it's not stopping everything all the time kind of situation.
Oh, hang on,
it's like-
hang on. Jolteon doesn't get
Oh, so it's even
Ooh.
worse. Okay, so yeah, that's it. Further backs up just like we don't have a way to guarantee Durant's the fastest thing all the time. We do have the cool synergy of Berserker Durant, where we just get to make sure Max Steel Spike blows things up, which is really really cool. Outside of that, you do have the Trick Room mode. That is a viable strategy for this team. Lorantis is something to not be underestimated. Contrary is nuts, especially since Lorantis gets things like Leaf Storm and can just sweep through teams by just getting +2, +2, +2 all the time. But yeah, this is about a 6. Could be a 6.5, I feel like, with like 1 or 2 trades. Jigglypuff does a lot for this team, and it's going to be reliant on just staying alive and having friend guard up so you don't just get blown up.
Yeah, I went for the 7.5. The half point there, by the way, was for the first pick Jigglypuff. It's just mad respect. So I kind of like my gripes with the draft style. Like, I do get it. Like, you get to pick your kind of strong mons at the end and guarantee your weaker mons. However, especially when you're not picking like an S tier, I feel like you're left with best of the rest sort of thing. When it comes to your A tiers, like Lipard, I don't think actually really does a lot on this team. It feels kind of out of place to me. You can fake out for Durant, but you can unburden stuff as well. But
yeah, the secret tech is max Jolteon, max Lightning, and then unburden your your Lipard, so it's even faster.
boom.
There's the secret tech of you can do you can pull the Hatterene trick with Musharna.
So yeah, so you can do the trick room thing, but why not just use trick room and Jigglypuff and Ally Switch and fake out? And yeah, I think you can use your A tier. I think like another A tier pick, with either a little bit more bulk or a little bit more either more offense or more defense. It feels like Lipard's kind of in the middle of the two here, not doing much. Maybe it's just a pranks them on as well, because it is, Prankster is kind of valuable, but I don't think Lipard was the right pick for this team overall. So that's kind of what didn't get me up to the 8 or 8.5 here. But overall, I think it's going to be pretty solid. He's the only person I know that plays Jigglypuff, hence his name. So he knows how to play with it. So it's how other people are going to be able to prep versus him.
Yeah, interesting points overall. I think in summary, I would say that this team is really centered around Durant, and it is very impressive that somehow Jiggly managed to have a good draft strategy and leave Durant to his 6th pick, yet still prepare good that ward off intimidate, ward off fire moves like what Carter said. Then this is notably also a team with the most number of mons with single types, 7 unique mons with just 1 type, as compared to all the rest of the drafts with a lot of mons with dual typings. Yeah, I feel like the type synergy of this team turned out to be pretty decent. They do cover each other very well, so that's quite impressive too. Okay, moving on, the second last team of the day, we have Jinja Greninja coming back from season 3 with the Darlington Earthquakers. His mascot is Matsdale, but he didn't draft it. Instead, he went straight for that Palosan draft in pick 1, followed quickly by a Salgor in that wheel pick. Then drafting a kind of strange team in general, because I feel like the rest of the Mons might not gel well with Palosan. What do you guys think?
Well, he drafted Brian, so he has the best water type. That being said, it's okay. I think this team is really reliant on like Excelgor Palosan to be able to do a ton of the heavy lifting for it. Obviously you have like Choice Band, Rockhead, Tyrantrum here to be able to dish out a ton of damage as well. But like majority of the time, you're not going to want to Dynamax it. That's one of my big problems with this team is it feels like your Dynamax targets are like Rotom and Palosan, and that's it.
Yeah.
The fact that like you don't want to really Dynamax anything else, like nothing else feels exceptionally good to be able to actually Dynamax. This makes this team feel a little lackluster in my opinion.
I'm in the same boat. Like, it feels like the team started off really cool with Palosan Excelgor, and then it's just like you have Alolan Persian, which is cool. It's one of my favorites to use in Draft League. We drafted Rotom Heat. Not sure exactly what that does for us in the whole grand scheme of things. Just adding another essential water weakness.
Yep.
And then another one in the Lowland Dugtrio. It's just, and then we have Tyrantrum, who doesn't. He's not weak to water, but it's neutral to water. So I feel like it's gonna struggle against any team that has a very strong water type. A lot of the times, Palosan still, like, even after Water Shuriken, it still can maybe take 1 or 2 more hits after that. But if you're like a +2 Max Geyser, your Palosan's probably going down there. Outside of that, I like the Fungus. I like the Meowstic female. This is like a competitive thing. Really good, just like if everyone tries to intimidate your Tyrantrum. But it still feels like a 6 team. We're missing some tools. Just needs to play well to do things. And Excelgor Palosan really has to line up well each week for it to do well.
Yeah, I think this was another. I just quickly put a score in this mon because I saw a lot of good Pokemon I liked, so I just went go 8. But yeah, I think actually second look at it, there's not a lot of offensive pressure really. Your main kind of attack is Tyrantrum and Alolan Dugtrio. So are they both going to come when they share a ground weakness? Possibly not. So you've only really got one physical threat to come in, which is easy to prep for because then you can just prep for the special attackers and not really care too much about the physical side of things. That being said, though, there are some kind of neat things you can do with like Alolan Persian and Slurpuff and Fungus as well. I think it's difficult. I think it kind of actually needs a slightly better Trick Room mode as well. Because your fast mons here are Persian, Excelgor, Meowstic, and Dugtrio, and only one of them actually deal damage. So yeah, I think a little bit better of a Trick Room mode would have been slightly favorable. Maybe you can make some trades to boost up that team. But I think on second look, I wouldn't give that an 8. I would probably give that between a 6 and a 7. Yeah, I would probably agree with you guys on that one.
Good points. Let's compare Jinja's team with Captain Unova's team. Captain Unova's team had a Salgor Palosan, but had Sableye Charizard, Sableye Dracovish at the same time. However, when we fight against Jinja here, we can immediately see, right, in team preview, oh, you're either going to lead a Salgor Palosan or you're going to lead something else. So that can be quite predictable, and that could be this team's downfall. Therefore, I feel like Jinja might have to get creative and find ways to sort of play mind games with your opponent, force them to bring important moves for Pelosan, and then play differently. Yeah, I don't agree with this like common weakness of water together with the Rotom heat, like Carter said. Yeah. Okay. So finally, we have the last team of the day of our league, and I believe EB95 in season 1 or season 2 was the last pick as well, and he really knows how to do wheel picks. So coming off with just Tyranitar Comfy, followed by a Gudra, and then Umbreon to sort of gel the team together. Then the rest of the picks are, to me, a little bit unorthodox. I think he kind of uh, like ran out of points, so has to dig deep and look hard for C tiers. But I think this is one team that can use Shedinja well. Yeah, what do you guys think?
So, first thing off the top of my head, Comfey Tyranitar Gudra is absolutely insane because you never know where the weakness policy is, and even if you do find it, it could be too late. Umbreon and Morgrem also make for a very good defensive team, but at the same time, now you have 3 dark types, and combined, that leaves you 4 fairy weaknesses. So like you just get smacked around by any fairy move that comes around because you have no resistance to it. On top of that, like I guess technically you have Shedinja for that resistance if you really need it, but at the end of the day, I think this team, its top end is absolutely insane. It's just lacking really heavily in the lower tier department, and as a result, I think if they could just make like 1 or 2 trades, this could go from a 9 to a 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is definitely on my list as like one of the top teams to play against. They don't really have to worry about like 6-mon syndrome because they have this midday Lycanroc they can just slap on as the 6th and abuse this sand they set up with the Tyranitar. And because Comfey gets grass coverage too, it's like that adds a third essentially who has the weakness policy, because you could do weakness policy Lycanroc and outspeed everything and just blow stuff up. Lycanroc is not something to just bat an eye at and just dismiss because it's frail. There's a big 4 fairies here, that 4 times fairy weaknesses over here, and no steel type to kind of resist it, or fire type, which that's kind of what the downside is of drafting at the end. A lot of the fires and steel types get picked up really, really fast. So if you don't take one early, you end up not getting them at all. And so you have the fact that they drafted 3 dark types and a dragon type means that all the fairy types are just going to come out against this team, and you have to prepare for that. Pick up a steel type somewhere, pick up a fire type somewhere. This team could easily go from a 9 to a 10, I feel like. Shedinja is going to do work for sure because everyone's going to want to beat Tyranitar with whatever weakness it has, and Shedinja can just switch in on almost all of them. Actually, no, Shedinja can actually switch in on all of them.
Yep. Great. I think I went a little bit lower than the guys. Probably the same thinking of Evan. Fairy weakness was huge, along with no actual kind of cores, no fantasy core, no fire, water, grass core. Actually, none, no fire, water, or grass.
Yeah.
Nope. No
Weird.
fire,
Like I
water,
said,
or
those
grass.
things disappear
So,
quick when you're on the bottom side of the draft.
yeah. But no reason they couldn't have picked one up because you get that double pick first. So I think he's got the tools to, if he could play very defensively, I think that's what he needs to do. He can't just go I'm gonna lead T-Tar Comfy, or I'm gonna lead Comfy Gudra and go Burr and proc mobility's policy and slap you, because I think that a lot of teams will prep for that. So he's gonna have to play around with like getting the Morgrem in, setting up screens, making sure he can switch T-Tar in on a Morgrem, because again, you need to make sure you don't share the weaknesses, because they both have a fairy weakness, they both have a steel weakness, so got to make sure that's kind of done well. The C tiers, like Shuringer works. Yeah, Shuringer works definitely a lot better in this team than it does in the last team. So respect to that pick as well. Like weird things like I don't know what Emolga does in this team. Like you can switch it into a physical
Tailwind?
move. No,
I don't
No.
know. It
Okay.
doesn't get.
no.
I didn't
could-
think so, but
You could switch it in on a physical move and hope you get a static proc, but that's pretty much all I'm thinking. Like, there's no real electric weakness. I don't think there is any actually. So you're not baiting an electric move to proc a motor drive or something. So not quite sure what Morgo's doing on this team. Can definitely swap that one out for another mon. Apart from that, again, if you have ways to deal with the T-Tar and Gudra, you're gonna have a good time against this team. But I think Eric just needs to do a couple of trades, get a couple of defensive cores in place, especially with the Morgrim. He's gonna do quite well.
Yeah. So the missing Firewater Grass core, I've seen it in quite a few drafts. However, like missing a Fairy Dragon Steel is to me more important. So having the Comfy and the Gudra and sort of like Tyranitar being a steel type mon with access to max steel spike could be okay. But I do agree with Sweet in that maybe Eric just has to make a few good trades. Having so many weaknesses to fighting and fairy and steel, the three of the most common moves, right? And not having a fire type in division with Durant, Scizor, right, and Escavalier is a bit detrimental. So, like, it seems like Tyranitar, Comfy, and Shedinja might have to put in so much work for Eric in his team. Yeah. So with that, that's all we have for the guard division. Let's quickly look at the summary and look at which teams have the highest rating, followed by the teams with lower ratings. And wow, this time we have more sixes, right? The bell curve sort of shifted low down.
Yeah, the bell curve definitely shifted down.
Mm-hmm.
That might be due to just like there's newer drafters. I remember this group was mostly newer players to Draft League. There aren't as many veterans in this group, if I remember correctly. So...
Evan set that up that way so that he can run the division.
No, it was all randomized.
No.
But
you
then,
missed the stream for it.
This felt a bit like skewed because I feel like the experienced drafters are clearly all the way on top, and then sort of the newer drafters are somewhere straggled in the middle.
Yeah, it feels kind of, that might be why it's skewed a little bit, is the newer players kind of drafted more for favorites and weren't sure what they exactly wanted, whereas a lot of the veterans just got to pick up a lot of the powerful draft tools that they're used to playing with a lot of the time.
It's not that much different actually when you look at it.
One more time on that.
I'm saying it's not that much different between the two groups. When you look at it, there's more 8s in guard than there is in cotton, and only like a couple more 6s.
7s.
Yeah, there's more 7s in that, so it's quite even, I think, across the board.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think that the only colossal player I think has the highest rating among both divisions.
True.
Yeah.
That shows how much
it's real close, but I honestly think that if they had picked, like, set up the team the way they did, except take Colossal at like 8 or 9, and just no one is prepared for it, it would have been insane.
Yeah.
Oh, very well said. Yeah. Then a few interesting things is that guard division has a lot of weather teams. As you can see from the summary here, a lot of mons like to abuse the weather, and I need to go back and count this. I'm very curious to know. I think it was reactionary in that a lot of the guard division players started to pick up Cloud9 mons towards the end of the draft. Yeah, we see an Altaria, we see Likitang, and then there's definitely Licky. So this is very interesting. Golduck as well. Then if you guys move to the next tab in tier list both divisions, I'm very excited to show this as usual. This is like so amazing because you get to see the similarities between both drafts, and if you scroll down, you get to see which mons were left behind, and that is very mind blowing. Look at Clefairy in S tier,
Yeah.
right?
And it's
Oh
crazy
my
to me that
God.
Conkelder, which is a mon that we shifted up a lot, is just unpicked. Which I
Yeah.
understand, but at the same time, I think is criminally underrated.
I think part of the Conkeldurr being left on the table is just like fighting types aren't that powerful
Mm-hmm.
in Dynamax formats just because they nerfed the strongest max Milk you get is base 95, whereas you look at Max Geyser, that's 140. That's a huge difference, no matter whether it's coming off of a base 150 attack stat or a base 97 special attack stat. The water type move is going to be better off anyway.
I'm curious if you want to keep scrolling here for me. What
Mhm.
Yeah, no Chansey Shuckle in either division. Neither of them were picked up in.
Which that's what we wanted.
Yeah.
We set that up that way so no one would draft that. No Gengar. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Honestly, talking with Tim, I debated taking Gengar instead of Alakazam.
I'm interested in these bees. Not
No Obama Snow. Ask me how surprised I am.
no Cloyster. your boy Cloyster got left
God,
on
I
the
love
bench.
Cloyster, man.
Yeah, Fletch Ender, like I mentioned, for Henry is on that table still. So if they wanted to switch into that, they could. What about these C's?
Bunch
Yeah,
of
what's
seeds.
interesting
Bunch of
for
Cs.
what would be interesting for C's would be the mons that are picked, because these are mons that people kind of find value in, right? Because they sort of have to dig deep and then pick up some C tiers that are worth 10 points to try and round out the team, yet still provide a lot of support for the team or offensive pressure uh, from the other spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can see that Electabuzz was picked for both. That's interesting. Dragcloak as well. So some of these NFE mons, Charjabug, I think Dottler as well. Dottler's below. Then people find a lot of value in them. Mr. Mime, Kanto, not just the Galarian one, but the Cantonian Mr. Mime as well.
Mm-hmm.
Scyther, yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, this is sweet. There's a lot of data to be able to absorb and go through and balance things for next season too.
Yeah, it's like getting to see all this stuff helps us balance it for next time. It's gonna be great. Okay.
So, before we get out of here, closing thoughts from either of you. Anything you want to touch on the way out?
Nope. I'm good.
Radio silence.
For me, just very interesting drafts in general. I feel like just take our opinions with a pinch of salt. There are some things that we might have overlooked, even with
or
4 pairs of
underlooked, you know?
eyes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mhm.
so even with 4 pairs of eyes, so like if you think that your draft deserves to be a higher rating, then prove it to us. Show us what you can do during the regular season. So good luck and have fun to all of you, all of the coaches for your matches.
Evan, are you going to be doing like weekly recaps like you had been for the multi-draft league?
Yeah, but I think I will, and I am
Okay.
trying to set up the spreadsheet to be able to do that easily. So I would need everyone to sort of let me know the 6 months you brought and then the 4 months you led with for each game, and then we should be able to get very nice stats in terms of usage throughout the whole draft, the whole league. Yeah.
Have to write things down and take notes, making me work hard.
I will make you a spreadsheet, Carl. And by that I mean Evan will make you a spreadsheet.
I guess you can make things easier by recording your match, since a lot of us have the capabilities of doing that. So you don't
I
have
was
to
gonna
write
stream
things
them
down.
anyway, so
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
I
gonna
may
be
not
very
put them on
exciting.
YouTube, but I'm definitely gonna stream them.
See, I'm the opposite. I'm probably going to record them, but may not stream them. So, Swede, final thoughts.
If you face me in Draft League, don't be scared.
Carl?
I'm excited. I am ready to just play with Snorlax and everything else I drafted and see how far we get. Definitely was not looking to draft the best team in the world, just looking to draft what I like to play with.
I completely understand. I am very, very excited to get back to Draft League. It has been far too long, in my opinion. It is honestly one of the true highlights for me every season is just getting to not only draft, but actually get to play the games and just explore mons that not only I haven't ever played with before, but mons that in the future I will be able to reminisce and talk about for years to come.
Yep.
So that being said, Evan, you were saying?
I just wanted to say, riding off of what you said, that even in these power rankings, we did have so many other stories, right, from Littleroot lessons. Like the teams reminded us of these stories that we can talk about. So it's very interesting to see how things play out. Then one last thing I want to say is that there are so many teams with similar pairs of mons, and it'll be quite exciting to see their journeys move on in both divisions, right, when they go their separate ways, to see how far these similar teams can go.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's it.
Is this time for the outro?
Yeah, let's get out of here, bud.
Cool. So, as always, everyone, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. This has been a slog more than I was actually anticipating, but way, way smoother than I also anticipated. So, thank you once again, Carl, Swede, and Evan for joining us tonight. It has been an absolute blast. And make sure you go and follow them on their socials as well. Swede does not have Twitter because he's an old man. Evan, you can find him at EvanSmokeVGC. Is that right? Okay. I know Swede is on Twitch. Swede_PS4. Evan, again, is EvanSmokeVGC there as well.
Mm-hmm.
You can find us on Twitter as well, at LR Lessons, myself at Mr. Missouri25, Carl's at MusicalVGC. We're on Twitch as well. You can find us at Mr. Missouri25 and at Musical. You can always join our community Discord. That is down in the show notes as always. We have our website where we're going to be, I'm assuming we're going to have all kinds of Draft League stuff up on the website here shortly as well.
Probably should have it, yeah.
Cool.
Soon-ish.
And let's see, we have the Rumble this next Wednesday, so if you're interested in playing Series 10 and not paying for it, you can always join that. Make sure you sign up in the Discord. That's where all of our events are. I think that's everything.
I think you hit them all.
Cool. That is going to be it, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this week, and we will be back next week with some more Littleroot lessons. Have a good one. Peace.